I was working the front desk at a boutique hotel in Munich when an American guest asked why we needed his passport. Not unusual. What came next? Very unusual. He explained that as a NATO ally, Americans didn't need passports in Germany because we're basically the same country. I tried to explain that every guest needs to register with local authorities regardless of nationality. German law. He pulled out his military ID from 1987 and said his father was stationed in Frankfurt, so technically he was born on American soil. He was born in Cleveland. When I insisted on the passport, he asked if I knew what NATO meant. I said yes. He said it means North Atlantic Travel Open. That's not what it means. He demanded to speak to someone who understood international law. I have a law degree. He asked if German law school covered American constitutional right. I told him the Constitution doesn't apply in Germany. He said that's exactly what someone who didn't understand it would say. He checked in with his passport. Then there was the woman at Alexanderplatz station who insisted the U-Bahn was called the subway and kept asking passengers where the subway entrance was. When I pointed to the giant U-Bahn sign, she said that must be the European name, but surely locals call it the subway. She asked what it stood for. Undergrundbahn. She said so. Subway. And that was just Tuesday. I work as a driving instructor in Stuttgart, and last summer an American man hired me to help him understand German traffic laws before renting a car. First question, what's the real speed limit on the Autobahn? I explained that many sections have no speed limit, but recommended speeds exist, and you must drive according to conditions. He interrupted. So it's like international waters. Complete freedom. I said no, there are still rules about lane discipline, passing, and safety. He nodded slowly and said, right, but essentially Mad Max. The next day he called me from his rental car. He'd been pulled over for sitting in the left lane going 120 kilometers per hour. He was furious because he was going fast and the left lane is the fast lane, so he was following the rules. I explained the left lane is for passing only. You pass, then you merge right. He said that's inefficient because what if you need to pass again? I told him that's when you move left again. He said American highways proved you could just stay in whichever lane matched your speed. I suggested he might want to stick to the right lane. He asked if that was because I thought Americans couldn't handle European driving. I said no, it's because he'd just gotten a €100 ticket. He said he'd contest it because the cop didn't speak English well enough to explain the law properly. The cop spoke perfect English. He paid it. 3 days later, the same man called about a parking ticket. He'd parked in a clearly marked disabled spot in Heidelberg because all the other spots were taken and he was only going to be 10 minutes. I asked if he had a disabled permit. He said no, but in America if you're just running in quickly, it's generally understood that you can use those spots. I told him that's definitely not a thing in America either. He said it was a gray area. I said it was a blue painted area with a wheelchair symbol. He argued that he didn't see anyone in a wheelchair waiting for the spot, so logically it was available. I explained that's not how accessibility parking works. He said the fine was €55, which seemed excessive for a victimless crime. I pointed out someone in a wheelchair might have needed that spot. He said if they really needed it, they would have gotten there earlier. He asked if I could call the parking authority and explain the cultural misunderstanding. I told him that parking in disabled spots without a permit is illegal in every culture. He said that kind of rigid thinking was why Europe had so many problems. I was helping an American college student practice for her German driving test. She was convinced that right on red was legal everywhere because it's a logical traffic pattern. I showed her the law. You cannot turn right on red in Germany unless there's a green arrow sign explicitly permitting it. She asked why Germany would make such an inefficient rule. I explained it protects pedestrians and cyclists who have the right of way. She said America solved this by having people look both ways. She studied hard, but during her test, she turned right on red out of habit. She failed. She appealed the decision because the instructor was in the car and could have stopped her if it was really dangerous. The appeal was denied. She had to wait 2 weeks and pay for another test. She asked if I thought the examiner failed her because she was American. I said no, he failed her because she broke traffic law. I manage a traditional German restaurant in Berlin, and last month an American family asked for tap water. Normal request. I brought them sparkling water. The father flagged me down and said he asked for tap water, not sparkling. I explained that in Germany, we typically serve bottled water and there's a charge. He said he didn't want to pay for water when tap water is free. I told him we don't usually serve tap water in restaurants. He said that was against health codes. I asked which health codes. He said American ones. I reminded him we were in Germany. He said health codes should be universal because water is a human right. I agreed water is important, but restaurants can charge for service and bottled water. He asked to see the manager. I was the manager. He requested a list of free drink options. I said we had no free drinks. He asked what people drink if they can't afford beverages. I explained people usually order drinks because that's how restaurants work. He said in America, water is always free and unlimited refills are standard. I told him this was Germany and we don't do unlimited refills of anything. He asked if that was legal. I said yes. He ordered the water but asked me to note on the bill that he was disputing the charge. When the bill came, he left exact change for the food but not the water. I added the water cost to his total. He paid it but said he'd be reviewing us online. He left a 2-star review saying we scammed tourists with mandatory water charges. 2 weeks later, an American woman asked why we didn't have free bread before the meal. I explained that's not a German custom. She said every restaurant has free bread. I said not in Germany. She said she'd been to restaurants in Frankfurt that had bread basket. I told her those might have been American-style restaurants or she might have ordered bread. She insisted they were German restaurants and the bread was complimentary. I offered to bring her our bread basket for €3. She said charging for bread was unethical because bread is a staple food. I mentioned that we also charge for potatoes, another staple. She said that's different because potatoes are part of a meal. I said bread could be part of a meal if she ordered it. She asked why German restaurants were so nickel and dime about everything. I explained our prices were clear and listed. She said American restaurants understood hospitality better. She didn't order bread. An American businessman asked why his schnitzel took 30 minutes. I apologized and explained we prepare everything fresh. He said he was in a hurry and in America, most restaurants guarantee food within 15 minutes or it's free. I told him we had no such policy. He said that's poor customer service. I explained that quality takes time. He said he could get a burger in 5 minutes back home. I suggested he might prefer a faster restaurant. He said he wanted German food but with American efficiency. I told him that wasn't really how it works. He asked if we could microwave it to speed things up. I said no, we don't microwave fresh schnitzel. He asked why not if it saves time. I explained it would ruin the breading and texture. He said he'd eaten microwaved schnitzel before and it was fine. He waited. When it arrived, he said it was cold. It was hot. He meant it wasn't steaming. I explained that proper schnitzel temperature shouldn't burn your mouth. He ate the entire schnitzel and then asked to speak to corporate. We're an independent restaurant. I was working at Munich Airport Immigration when an American man handed me his passport with his global entry card attached. I processed his passport and returned both documents. He asked why I didn't scan his global entry card. I explained that global entry only works entering the United States. He said he had TSA pre-check too. I told him that also only works in America. He said he paid $100 for expedited screening everywhere. I explained it's a U.S. program for U.S. airport. He insisted the website said global entry, implying worldwide access. I told him the global refers to international travelers entering the U.S., not Americans entering everywhere. He asked what the point was then. I said faster re-entry to America. He said that was false advertising because global means global. He asked if Europe had an equivalent program. I mentioned the EU has different systems for their citizens. He asked if he could apply as a tourist. No. He asked why not if he visits frequently. I said because he's not an EU citizen. He said he pays taxes when he buys things here, so technically he contributes to the EU economy. I told him that's not how citizenship works. He asked if there was any way to skip the line. I said no, everyone waits. He said in America they have premium services for everything. I mentioned that Germany values equality in public services. He said that sounded like socialism. He asked how long the security line was. I said about 15 minutes. He said that was unacceptable for someone who pays for premium travel services. I reminded him those services don't work here. He asked if he could speak to a supervisor. My supervisor said the same thing. He went through regular security. He missed his flight. He came back and asked if there was a complaint form for inefficient EU processing. I gave him a customer feedback form. He asked if someone would respond. I said yes, eventually. He asked if they could reimburse his missed flight. No. He filled it out anyway. In the comments section, he wrote that global entry should work globally and Germany should honor American security programs because of NATO. He asked if I personally agreed the system was unfair. I said I just worked there. He said that was a diplomatic answer. Americans are convinced their systems are universal, and when they're not, the world is simply doing it wrong. The confidence is almost impressive. And somewhere right now, another American is confidently explaining to a confused German that the metric system is inefficient because freedom units make more sense.